Welcome back to Goddess Garden Book Chat readers. We're in for another deep dive from one of our favorite digital sanctuary books that I found. It has been such a pleasure to bring these books to you. I hope you're enjoying the Goddess Garden Book Chat. I hope you enjoy all three of my channels: Tall Tales Short Stories and Dusty Film Cans, and The Private Garden, where mature reads are talked about extensively. But here in the Goddess Garden, we're going to do book versus film again because I have a lot of fun with these. And this one I'm going to do myself. I'm not giving it to the chat squad. We're going to talk about War of the Worlds, written by H.G. Wells. Also, in comparison to the Steven Spielberg version of War of the Worlds, with Tom Cruise as its star character. So sit back and get comfortable. This is going to have spoilers, just so that you know, because I'm going to really dive into how the two stories differ and how Steven Spielberg, in my opinion, did a great job sticking as close as he could to the original work. I'm also going to be talking about some of the most iconic invasion stories ever told when you talk about War of the World. Especially if you read the novel, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So buckle up. We're going to walk through this terrifying invasion and we're going to enjoy, not like I did before with the Stephen King Shining, where I talked about both books. I would compare one to the other. First, we're going to talk about the book, then we're going to talk about the movie. So let's get right to it, friends. So let's talk about a novel that was written in 1895 by H.G. Wells. And I want you to sit with that for a minute because something that has been around that long generally does not stand the test of time, especially when it comes to visceral storytelling that can move you. But I got to tell you, I just read this book in 2025. I'd seen movies about the War of the Worlds. I'd heard what had happened when Orson Welles did the radio show, and it scared all the people that were listening. So I knew a lot of lore, but I never read the book. Never even entertained reading the book because I felt like been there, done that, and I had covered it. I am so glad that I went back and read it because I want to talk about so many things that the novel does, even though it was written long ago, that resonate today. So first, we're going to talk about the prelude, which I would say is, it's narrated. You're not really clear who's narrating it, but it's an observation about human arrogance and about observing how humans never expected to be watched by a more intelligent life form. It speaks so clearly as the novel unravels to the miscommunication and the not miscommunication, that's not a good word. It really speaks to misunderstanding your place in the bigger scheme and looking around at the universe. You tend to think, I am the top of the food chain. This novel helps you to understand you don't even know how extensive the food chain might be. So Wells, he positions the earth as vulnerable. He sets that in motion very early on because he wants, in my opinion, to make sure you understand that as secure as you feel, whether it's through your religious beliefs, whether it's through your position in service to your country, yeah, no. There's something out there that's way meaner, way more methodical, and way more intentional with what it wants to do in terms of world domination. So the initial impact of how this novel unfolds is you get a lot of citizens not really appreciating when they hear it from others that this could even be true. There are Martians that have landed on the planet Earth. And it all takes place in Europe. I want to say in England, um, because they refer a lot to Wimbledon. And I'm assuming that I know where that is. I don't know where that is. And hey, I'm a Venus and Serena fan, and I don't know what Wimbledon is. They know what Wimbledon is, but I don't know what Wimbledon is. But I digress. I'm spiraling. See, this is why I use chatbots, because I told you I'll just go crazy. But anyway, the citizens are really struggling with believing Martians have landed. And the first thing that happens are these cylinders. And it speaks to the arrogance of humanity that the first thing that you want to do is you want to approach it or attack it, not understanding that there is no correlation between how you see the world versus whatever entity is coming at you. And so when the cylinder crashes, it crashes in something called horsal common, and it creates curiosity, but it doesn't create fear yet. That's another brilliant thing about this book. You don't get the sense of fear right away. You may have in 2025 an understanding of Martians have landed, and you're instantly sensitive and you're trepidatious and you know it's going to be highly impactful. But and I say this respectfully, within certain cultures, they there's this understanding of placement that of course I shouldn't be afraid. The military will take care of this. There are those the government will handle this. That is one of the biggest mistakes that this book's going to make repeatedly. And the moment that terror starts to set the tone in this novel, the invaders don't communicate, they don't negotiate, they study. They're very tactical in what they do. And the way that this book is written, the realization as it happens to the citizens is the realization of their horror washing over you. It's not so much you're in this realization moment, but you feel the anxiety and the absolute fear when they realize there is no communicating. There is nothing that you have that can offset this. So, the conquering of the human race, the consumption of the human race, is where this goes almost immediately. When you deal with a novel that beautifully unravels panic, it has this ability to make the reading experience so much more visceral because you know how the story ends. It's been around for over 100 years. But what you're listening for and what you enjoy in a novel like this is the realization of the citizens of the time having to deal with that. So we start with the spread of panic, excuse me, and the technological terror of the citizens. And then the Martians start to build. They build these towering tripod walking war machines. And these war machines move in response, as far as you can tell, as to how they're received when they arrive. Now, Wells presents the horror of the invasion with realism. The government collapses almost immediately. You've got fleeing refugees, and you've got shattered faith in human superiority almost immediately. But you do have a sect of population that's still cleaving unto how could this happen? The government is going to deal with this. Look, there are military people. They're going over there and they're going to take care of this because there's that self-preservation of I'm at the top of the food chain. There's no way this is the last that's going to be heard from a citizen. And you start looking at people who are surviving, but realizing that those that have died in a very realistically horrific way. They've died because of their arrogance. They died because they didn't understand that their encounters were not going to be received, they were going to be dealt with. And so um, there's a panicking of, let me look at my notes here because I had to take notes. So I'll make sure that I did this right. Um, there are artillerymen who have dreams of being in service to their country, being in service to the world, because they don't know if this is worldwide. Again, the government has collapsed. Information and the flow of information doesn't really exist as they need it to. So people are visually seeing military men. They're hearing from military men about their encounters. They're hearing from citizens about the encounters. But even more importantly, the narrator concerns you with how one individual who gets separated from someone he cares for tries to figure out how to get back to that person. So there's this dual reality of when this horror strikes, you get separated. And like most people, you don't have if anything happens, meet me here, wait 5 days, go there. Nobody works out plans like that because you never believe that there's a reality in which this kind of thing could happen, even though in 2025 we're surrounded by the potential and almost at every turn that this could be a reality. But this novel sets it up in a way where this one individual is watching people deal on several levels with the fact that citizens that they know and care about are being attacked, being consumed, and being ignored because there's going to be a domination. Now, there's also this red weed that I guess is being laid so that the Martians have the nutrients they need as they take over and terraform the planet they're going to inhabit. And so this red weed, it's a creeping plant and it starts to really choke the life and reshape the ecosystem out of the planet Earth. And the citizens don't know what it is, But through what they're seeing, they start to imagine that this is apocalyptic. This isn't a war, it's a colonization. And so human instinct and its primal base starts to kick in. Even when you find other people who are surviving, there is no faith, there's no trust. You don't feel like this is somebody that I can partner with and make it through. They instantly become suspicious. You've never met them before, and food is scarce. Water is even scarcer. Peace of mind, places to rest are hard to come by. And you are subject to wind up with somebody who's two cookies short of a delicious snack. So you could be bunkered with a complete cuckoo. And unfortunately, you wind up having to survive that person. That is a very visceral part of this book. It's not just Martins. It's not just Martians that you have to contend with. You also have to contend with this old adage, I don't have to outrun the animal, I just have to outrun you. There's definitely that feel, but it's on a very terrorizing level because where are you going to run to if you survive? So this is a part of the terror as this one individual is trying to figure out, did the person I love even make it? Are they okay? How long am I going to be okay? I don't get water regularly, don't get sleep regularly. All of these things are coming through, even in something that was written so long ago. You can feel the panic, the doom, the dread set in, and it's done masterfully. Now let's talk about the Martian defeat, which is one of the most brilliant things about this story. Even as it moved into 2025, when it was remade, the defeat was, it's right there. It makes perfect sense considering it was written in 1885. You understand that you've got something that's leveling cities, it's massacring armies, it's draining human blood from the bodies of its citizens for nourishment. But the problem with consuming humans is you consume the things that they've become immune to that these Martians have not. Human bacteria, earthly bacteria, things that we have conquered, that we have medications for, they were not ready for. And so the way that this story unfolds and the realization that on the brink of insanity and on the brink of starvation and on the brink of I'm going to lose everything to these Martians. They're going to take everything from us. You start to see the impact of we are stronger when it comes to this planet because we're accustomed to this planet. They're not. Now, I'm going to shift reels here because you understand, I don't want to give away the ending completely because it's a beautiful ending to the novel. It was almost tearful. Oddly, you know what's going to happen, but it's written so well. Just made me feel so good the way that it ended. I digress. Let's move on to 2005 when Steven Spielberg releases War of the Worlds and he gets the biggest action star out there. I would say even today, and I'm in 2025, he gets Tom Cruise. And Tom Cruise plays Ray, who is a working class dock worker. He's kind of a flawed father. Where in the novel, he has lost an important person to him. In the Spielberg version, he uses Ray's fractured relationship with his children to really ground the terror into the personal story. So it's not one person that the main character has to worry about, it's two. And because, like any parent, you'll do anything to protect your kids. One of the things that really stuck with me in watching the movie was how you'll do anything to make sure that they're happy. But you've got two different personalities and you're not in the greatest relationship with either of them. And so they're relying on each other more than they're relying on you. And it comes through so clearly in this movie that these children are really not trying to move the way he wants them to, especially his son. I don't know if you remember it or not, but it really comes to a situation where the son has started to take a stand about how he wants to deal with this war that's happening on his planet. Whereas, as a parent, all you want to do is shield your children, get them out of harm's way, get them to safety. Yeah, they don't see safety the way that you do. They feel like safety is in the defense of the things and the principles by which you planted in them and raised them. So it's a lesson to when you don't think that the lessons that you teach are impactful, watch it and how it manifests in the way that your children move. So you have the first tripod attack, which is terrifying. It's deafening and it's chaotic, but it's also cinematic because you've seen the Spielberg movie before. And the heat ray that vaporizes humans is it uses this dust, if I remember correctly. It's been a minute since I've seen the movie, but I do remember it fairly well. And he does mirror the imagery of 9/11 with the devastation of what happens in England. This ash covered survivors that are wandering through the streets, this sense of mass hysteria, this military failure, and the invasion is fast, loud, and unrelenting. Both the movie and the book do this very, very well because no matter which one you're enjoying, the pace at which everyone is trying to react to this does not keep up with the entities that they're facing. No matter what they do, they've been outthought, they've been outmatched, and their best bet is to flee. Now, in the movie, Ray, who flees with his daughter and his teenage son, they become like a road trip trio until something really starts to tear at the fabric of their relationship, which was already flawed. But Spielberg replaces the narrator's philosophical detachment with raw emotional pain that they're dealing with as a family, manifested in trying to um, do this hero seeking redemption. This was where in the movie I could not understand. I think I still don't why his oldest son would choose the path that he did, knowing that he was leaving his other sibling in the hands of somebody he necessarily didn't have a good relationship with. I don't know that he didn't trust his father, but he certainly didn't have a good relationship with him. And so he makes a decision that I didn't quite understand, but I guess that's why movies are as great as they are. They leave you talking about stuff. And then you also have the survivor's tale with the family flight. You have we're okay, but the kids are trying to figure out is their mother okay? So the survival portion of what you saw in the book where he's wondering, is this person that I love so much, are they okay? Are they even alive? This is what's happening with the children about their mother. Not necessarily Ray, because that's his ex-wife. She's moved on. She's got a life. Let her husband worry about whether or not she's okay. Ray is not trying to deal with that. He's trying to make sure his kids are okay. But they place upon him the burden of get us to our mother. So you can imagine where that goes. And then there are some other terror tactics. There's this angry mob that literally takes Ray's car. And then there's this basement character that mirrors a lot of what happens in the original book. They wind up in a basement with an unstable person, and it becomes a primal survival situation. Things you never thought that you would do, you are forced to do in order to survive, in order to keep your family safe. The human harvesting that happens in the movie is the Martians are using the humans' blood to fertilize the red vines. So it's similar to the red weed from the novel, but the red weed in the novel is more of a nutrient that is terraforming versus how it's used in Spielberg's movie. I could be interpreting it wrong. Who knows? That's what I thought. That's how I remember it. Anyway, but then you have this real aha ending where it is so similar to the novel. It's brilliant, it's enjoyable, and you get to watch the Martians collapse due to infection. It's done beautifully in the movie as well. And you have Morgan Freeman's closing narration quotes. Well, it's almost verbatim from Orson Welles. And it really does tie the adaptation back to the original text. So if you watch the movie all the way through and you've read the book, this will make sense to you. If you've only seen one, you may have missed it. Because at the time, truth be told, I missed it because I had not read the book. So let's get into the comparative analysis at this point. And we're going to take a good look at Wells' novel as a cold, analytical, sorry to say antithetical, that makes no sense, analytical terror novel versus Steven Spielberg's emotional horror. I would say overall, the movie trades the Wells philosophical dread for the raw fear and trauma reflecting in modern anxieties, if that makes any sense. Because back then, you didn't have, especially where this novel takes place, you didn't have the kind of pressures that are being faced in a modern world. And so you can feel the difference between the two. Um, you get first person narrator observance and that emotionally distant and reflective feeling from the novel. But the film literally puts Ray at the center. He's that every man with visible flaws, and he's forced into a reluctant heroism that he probably didn't even think he was capable of. But most of us truly do appreciate as parents what this means when you're faced with these kinds of situations. So, um, there are the narrators. There's Ray. There's the curate versus the, I don't even know how to say this word, the ogilvy, and they're both descending into madness. The curate and the can't say it. The ogilvy are the things that happen in that basement. So if you get a chance and you get to look at these two, there are some great similarities, but the book has this relationship lasting a lot longer, and you see the sadness of how it ends that's reflected in the main character. I didn't get that from watching the movie. I didn't get that he was sorry that he had to do what he had to do. I just feel like it was so, and of course, you only have a finite amount of time. But when you make that kind of decision for the first time in your life, it can have profound effects. It is not something to be glossed over. Um, I think Spielberg humanizes the victims a lot better, um, but Wells elevated the horror and the domination better. Um, and I think that's more of a listening experience versus a visual experience. You know, you can't get ground in the way that Wells tells this as a horror story when visually you get connected to these characters, especially when you use celebrities that you know from other things. You're instantly connected. You don't want to see anything bad happen to them. Now, what the movie gets right is the sense of helplessness and the chaos and collapse. The ending, staying true to the bacteria twist, was risky, but Spielberg respected Wells's vision and he executed it in a very smart way. But I can't help but feel like that ending made me sad because after all that you went through, after everything that Ray did, I felt like he literally was sort of cast aside. I don't know if I'm the only person that felt that way because I don't know. I don't think I've ever talked about this with anybody else. But I do feel like when I watched the movie, I expected an ending where the relationships amongst all of them having gone through an invasion from Martians would have been a lot more in terms of solidarity. I guess that's what I'm looking for because in the book you have closure where everyone realizes just how precious life is and what has been lost, who's been lost, and the devastation around them because you never know if this is it. This was the first experience, but are there more invasions coming? Is this something that was just sort of test to see how far they could get and the next time they're going to go further? You don't get that in the movie. You get that, oh, we defeated the aliens, everything's fine except for you, Ray. And we're just going to keep on going because, yay, we're humans and we're on Earth and we're the best. That seems risky. So, to wrap up this deep dive, and to be honest with you, I could talk about this ad nauseum, but I'm going to wrap up here, and I'm going to say that doing this as both the book and the novel, I don't know that I would have picked the other versions of how the story was told. I know there's a prior movie. I know there are the radio shows that Orson Welles did, because the internet never sleeps. Those things are out there. But I think when you look at Spielberg's version and you look at H.G. Wells's version, I think it's the perfect complement almost 100 years later to continue this story. I do feel like there were some things that could have happened differently, but overall, this is such a fantastic tale. And it is such a great thing to see it live on and on like this. I can't wait to see. I won't see it, but I'm sure 100 years from now, some great director or playwright or storyteller is going to take this to the next level. Who knows? They may have a firsthand account to draw on and tell this from a very visceral experience. Who knows? But, friends, I do want to tell you I'm not doing a personal perspective here. It's not necessary. I've talked about this. I hope you've had a chance to enjoy some version of this, though many of us know the overall story of War of the Worlds. This is something that I hope that you spend time appreciating and understanding that it's not always as cut and dried as a food chain. You have to understand that we are in a universe, and this universe is vast. And there could be something watching you while you're watching those within your ecosystem. Just a little food for thought. Subscribe, like, and I'll see you on the next book review. H.G. Wells, War of the Worlds. Absolutely. You know what rating I'm going to give it, right? I'll see you at the next book review, friends.